Welcome to the Acolyte After Show on the Force Geeks, a Star Wars podcast, as we break down the latest episode of this new live-action series. It's new Star Wars. This episode is number 177 of the pod. We appreciate you joining us. You know, we have to mention that there will be some massive spoilers for a very action-packed episode, episode 5. There's so much to go into, and there's debate on this one. Significant debate amongst the Force Geeks. We're gonna have a fun time going into this one because we had, I will say, a heated discussion today, a lively chat, if you will. A spirited conversation taking place in the Force Geeks text group. So we'll get to that. In the meantime, again, spoilerific is the way this is going to be. You need to hit that pause button, and I'm about to go and ruin some things if you haven't done that just yet. Got to be quick on the draw, because coming up on this episode of the Force Geeks, the Red Sith Wedding. It's Jedi bloodshed, reminiscent of Game of Thrones, but does the brutal approach pay off for this story? We'll go into that for you. The ancient armor of Legends acclaim, Cortosis, appearing in live action. The history behind the material that short circuits lightsabers and bangs people's heads around. Darth Teeth's, or as I like to call him, Darth Beavis's identity finally revealed. Maze Master is exactly who many of us suspected him to be, but was this revealed at the right time in the story? Jake has some thoughts on that as well. New dark side lightsaber design. Qimir's lightsaber hides a Shoto blade. How does it enhance the Master's combat, and does the fandom approve on the new lightsaber twist? We always get new lightsabers along the way. It is a new twist I enjoyed. Osha and Mae's The Parent Trap twin switch. The significant impact this will play on the paths of each twin and the story, and the super villain problem. One of us has a major issue with a super-powered villain that can thrash Jedi at will and says the show is now ruined for him. We'll get into that.
Well, they don't went quite that far.
It seemed like it. Hey, I'm Nate Custer. You know who it is now. I'm Nate Custer, coming to you from Northwest Arkansas. My fellow Force Geeks, Jake Scott and Chris Ridlon. They are back with us again, guys, on this podcast. As always, want to give a big shout out to dailysuperhero.com, run by our good friend and fellow Force Geek, Mr. Daniel Wolf.
And the lover of Jedi murder.
That's right. Mr. Daniel, Kill All the Jedi. I love it. Wolf. It is where you can get your superhero and Star Wars news. In addition to supporting Dan, we would love it if you support us by subscribing to the pod and leaving us that oh-so-kind positive review. So, guys, it really does mean a lot to us, and I would love to read those on the show. So if you do follow it, I know it's asking a lot to go back to your podcast catcher of choice, Apple Podcasts, whatever it might be. And then if you haven't already signed in, to create a login, to say something nice. But if you do, we'll read it for you. We'd appreciate that. You can make sure you hit us up on social media, too, for the conversation to continue online, and that includes our Facebook page and X and Instagram and YouTube and all sorts of stuff. Just search for us at The Force Geeks, and you'll find the convo there. I've been trying to be tweeting or Xing, I guess it is now, which is so stupid to call it that, but I've been doing that. I've been doing a lot of my personal accounts, so you can feel free to follow me there, too. And though we create the show every week right here in the good old US of A, we know we have a global audience, and we appreciate it. We just want to say thank you to our international friends. We really do love you. So greetings and thanks to everyone listening all over the world, including our listeners in not too far away from you, Jake, Vancouver, BC, and Columbia. Those crazy Canucks, they just keep listening, so we appreciate you. I know you're not crazy, but I'm a fan of alliteration. And here in the United States, we got to say howdy to our pals in Nutley, New Jersey. We appreciate your support as well as your friendship in the Force. Can I just mention real quickly that I know that it's soft, it's very moronic humor that I joke about these different little funny town names that I find along the way. My dad and my stepmother were recently visiting me, guys, and I found out that my stepmom listens to the pod every now and then and was asking me questions. What's the deal with this city? I'm a 12-year-old boy at heart, is what it comes down to. I just love finding funny places. So that's what it's all about. Guys, I went through the teases of the show of what we're going to talk about. Initial reactions. This is episode 5, titled Night, which, of course, follows day. It's sequential. It makes sense. I follow the logic on this. And did it get dark? Jake, I'm starting with you, bud, because I know you are coming in hot on your thoughts on this. Jake's hot take.
Still such a role reversal. It's normally Dan.
I know.
You're
I
welcome,
know.
people.
Yeah,
we
he's
have
not
Jake
here.
I loved it. Loved it. I watched it 4 times last night alone. But
Jeez.
Jake, I stayed up late watching it over and over again because I loved it.
It's not that I disliked it.
Come on.
I really have this like visceral dislike of overpowered villains. It's part of the reason I'm not a Marvel fan, because of the whole Thanos thing. Like, it just gets so ridiculous when somebody can alter the very physics and fabric of the universe at the snap of a finger. Then why are we even talking about fighting somebody like that? It's not possible. It's stupid. It's not really quite that bad here.
Qimir to Thanos, though? I mean, really?
It's a comparison that is ham-fisted, I will admit, but it gets my point across with you guys, because you know what I mean when I say it.
What about Palps, though? We got to bring it up. Dan said we could.
Yeah.
We can bring in his comments.
Very active on a chat group, but can't be on tonight. But we're gonna bring in his hot takes on Jake's hot takes.
Like I said,
Dan's
agree.
point is Palpatine wasn't overpowered. Come on.
Yeah, he was, and I didn't like that either.
Because I started in on you.
Yeah.
Dan and I were just tag teaming on you, dude.
I don't like it when people are too powerful, because it takes away, to me, the feeling of why are we even looking at the fight when it can't be won.
So here's my counter argument to that, Jake.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you look at these villains, especially Jedi versus the Sith, the whole rule of 2, which is, I mean, let's be real, it's really rule of 3, because even the apprentice is always looking for a new apprentice themselves, ready to overthrow the master. So it's really rule of 3,
rule
basically.
Of however many they have.
Yeah. So, but
at the time,
the rule of 2, there's only 2 of them. So they have to be super powered if they're going to hold their own against thousands of Jedi all around.
Part of the point, if you remember back, and I know you've read the books.
Oh, you're
Darth
Bane books. You son of a bitch. School away.
I know you've read them. Part of the point of going with the rule of 2 was to stay low and stay out of the way and be hidden. And that's impossible to do when you've got tons of people, right? And so Bane's whole idea was, we're going to concentrate our power in these 2 people, but we're also going to try to stay on the DL and not be running into the Jedi ever, if we can help it. Right now, anyway.
Right. So, you know what? I'm going to get right into this. I was going to save this for later in the conversation. Qimir says, you might call me Sith, or something to that effect. Mm-hmm. I don't have a name, but you might call me Sith.
Yeah.
Might call me Sith. He's not necessarily confirming he is Sith.
No.
I mean, we're led to believe that's what it is. And the whole marketing behind this and all the conversations have been coming from Lucasfilm. This is a story from the Sith point of view.
Sith, yeah.
So I'm assuming he's Sith, and we can take him at his word on that. But there is this like little bit nagging at me. Is he a Knight of Ren? That's a popular theory that's going around. Sure. Like, could he be the start of the Knights of Ren? Possibly. He's definitely a dark side user of the Force. Yeah. We know that.
He's a bad guy. I mean, do we really need anything else?
Yeah. I don't know.
He's a bad guy.
Come on, the fanboys need certainty.
Well,
Or is he not breaking canon?
I just don't necessarily think it matters what we call him, to be really honest. He's a bad guy.
It does matter to me, because I am beholden to canon. I am one of those fanboys that I'm like, how does this work? I think you can take some license to manipulate some things and move things around a bit when it comes to that. But the fact that Ki-Adi-Mundi appears in this show leads me to believe, when he says they've been extinct for 1,000 years, that I still trip up on that. If Qimir truly is Sith, and Sol has gotten away as the lone Jedi to survive that whole debacle that was Shishka Jedi, the thing that gets me is, will he ever be in touch with the Jedi Order to tell them what he found, that it's a Sith, practicing Sith, like they're here, they're now. Ki-Adi-Mundi would more than likely be made aware of that. Some Jedi would be made aware of it. For that to die away leads me to believe that Sol can't possibly be in touch, or he's going to keep a secret from the rest of the Jedi that the Sith are here. And I'm trying to figure out.
Maybe he's going to turn.
Well, they set it up that he's got a big secret, right? So that's where they're going with that. Like, he takes a Barrage vow, I don't know. But they've set it up. He's got a big secret that he's hiding. And so it would make sense that if he's hiding one secret, he might be hiding the Sith's presence, or just not reporting to reveal it. So
I have questions that I'm ready to have answered. I will say something here that I like the timing of this reveal of the Master. I think it could have been done earlier, but story-wise, I'm fine with it where it is. I think that the reveal was really well done in my eyes. Jake, for you, how did all that work? Because I know part of the reveal is just how superpowered he is. So what's the biggest problem you have that he's so superpowered? Why would he not perhaps be skilled? Like the dark arts is something the Jedi have not faced. They don't come across it. They have witches, which we know. There are other sects of Force users in the galaxy, but a practicing Sith is not something this generation would be familiar with. And perhaps he can dispatch them with such ease because they don't know what they're doing against this style.
I don't know. I mean, a sword fight is a sword fight, and I don't know that there's definitely enough nuance here to really say, well, because they're not aware of his specific way that he uses a lightsaber, they're at a disadvantage. It was 8-1 to start with this guy, and I don't care how tough you are. That's a hard battle to win. Now, granted, he picks them apart one by one, and that's how you would have to do it, but it was too easy. And I have a whole list of reasons why I have a problem with all this stuff.
So they do have, to take the devil's advocate side here, they do have, Yord is like, it makes no sense. He uses different forms, no combat style, like he's basically saying like they've never seen anything like this before.
So
and
the
Jedi initially
follow the rules
attack
of combat. That doesn't necessarily mean they haven't seen the form.
He specifically says, it's a form they haven't seen before. So then it makes no sense. And then, initially the Jedi are attacking one by one, and it's not, a la how they go after Palpatine, right? In Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah.
He
skewers them.
Right. So, and
Which
then, I think they also were completely unprepared for the Cortosis braces, right? Like shorting out the lightsabers. So I think you combine all those three things. I still, it's a little much. Like, he is kind of doing judo where he's like drawing them in and then ducking under and stuff like that. But though, the kill where he gets one and then runs one through and then force pulls another onto his saber. That's a much, but they've shown already that he's got power. And I think you're right. I think you and Dan are right on this, Nate, that the Jedi just have not faced serious force using, opponents in so long that they're like, they've forgotten. So,
and I'll point out that Dan said the Jedi be soft. They're soft.
Well, that's fine.
This era.
But again, calling back to the prequel trilogy books, not the prequel trilogy, the Old Republic series of books.
Okay.
They talk a lot about how Force users are trained to put up a defense against things like force pushes, force pulls, force kinetic stuff. And yet Qimir's throwing these people around like they're nothing over and over and over again, like they're never learning. To me, that's really
was
stupid.
Friggin' sweet.
Well, it looks neat, which I'm sure is part of why they do it. But
it did. It looked amazing.
It's unreasonable to think that people who spend almost their entire lives learning how to fight are not going to think of that. Or like no one seems to be able to anticipate him, even though we know that, precognition and, knowing what someone's going to do slightly before they do it is something that goes with the Force for everybody, right?
But maybe
so like
Cortosis...
when they throw, well, no, I've got a reason for that. Like when he throws his cape onto Saul, that should not have bothered Saul. He should have seen that coming a mile away. And there was plenty of time for him to move and no helmet.
Unless the dark side is clouding his ability, I think he's managed to conceal like the fact that he is a dark side user when he had multiple direct interactions with a bunch of Jedi, all of these guys. So you can't tell me that he doesn't have some ability.
But there's a big difference between hiding your force power and hiding the fact that you're about to attack somebody, which requires harmful intent.
I don't know. I disagree. I think, if you read the Plagius novel, there's a whole bunch of doing stuff like that, where they're interacting, Plagius, Sidious directly interact with like super powerful Jedi and they have no idea that they have.
Because they're not trying to attack them. Attacking somebody is a whole different deal.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I didn't have as big a problem with that.
I'm just going based off of how it's always been in everything, really. And in that knowing that you have intent towards harming somebody gets their attention more than simply observing them. And observing them gets their attention more than just being around them.
And how does Palpatine launch like 3 of the most powerful Jedi on that council?
Exactly my point. Why I had a problem with it. It's all consistent. I have a problem with it because it goes against everything that we've ever been told about how Jedi sense attacks coming and how the Force is supposed to work. It does
correspond with the Jedi being allowing their minds to be clouded by their own thoughts that they have everything under control. I mean, they kind of got a little full of themselves, and the dark side takes advantage of that. And I got to say, on this episode of the podcast, we'd be nerding hard on this, but I do think the dark side, it clouds everything. It clouds the judgment of the Jedi. I think that's why the dark side continues to persist in such a strong manifestation with just so few users of it. It is that powerful, and that is why there's not more dark side users needed to be effective, which is kind of one of those tropes that Star Wars uses again and again. And Star Wars, if nothing else, is a lot of tropes. And that's something I've seen people complaining about. Star Wars tells a very similar story, no matter what story that is. There are similarities. It was very intentional by George Lucas to say that things rhyme. It wasn't just part of the saga. It's all these stories. They tend to say the same thing, and it comes down to good versus evil, and that evil is a very powerful thing, and it takes the many on the right side of the Force, the light side, to overcome that. And I think that plays into the overall story when you look at this. And any really good story, whether it's a hero story, what is only as strong as its villain. And we've talked about that so many times. And to Dan's point, this is, I think, probably the best villain introduction we've seen in Star Wars television. I think it's the best one. I mean, clearly I would say that Baylan Skoll, but he was not necessarily clearly the main villain of that.
He's not the main villain.
Yeah, really strong.
I think that also, Qimir talks about getting in people's head, and I think he's doing that. And even the dialogue with Soul, Soul's like, what kind of master doesn't really reveal his face to his apprentice? And, you should know. That's what Qimir comes back with. So I don't know. I mean,
yeah, but you're saying that he's messing with the minds of 8 Jedi at the same time?
Yes.
No, he's only attacking with the one, the one that is directly attacking him. They don't all attack him at the same time. There is no point at which more than 2 are attacking him.
There is a point where they're all surrounding him and attacking him basically at the same moment, or very, very close together.
Initially, but
he doesn't. He misdirects them and just ducks under, and then avoids them. So I don't know. Maybe, but
it works for me.
I go with, I guess, my suspension of disbelief goes with what Nate and Dan are saying in terms of the Jedi are just soft. They haven't dealt with this. They have no experience. They walk into it thinking they're the biggest baddies around, and they're not. So,
and if it's been 1,000 years,
with that, what I have a problem with is the extent to which it's taken.
Yeah,
I don't have a problem with Jedi dying. I don't have a problem with them being beaten. I just do have a problem when it's too easy. And in this case, in my opinion, it was too easy. And we have to, in my mind, set aside far too many things that have been fairly stable in Star Wars up till now to account for it.
But there's a history in Star Wars.
I don't buy that. I don't buy that at all, though.
There's too much of a history.
He defeats the the red shirts, essentially.
Yep. I've
4
got
red
that
shirts
in my
attack
notes.
him. Yeah. He lunches them. And then when the actual main Jedi are fighting him, he essentially loses, right? Soul could have killed him. So I don't know. I guess.
Well, I have a problem with that scene too. But
I understand what you're saying, Jake, but I just don't think it's as bad as I think you're taking the most negative application of it is, I guess, what I would say. And I can see the red shirts, man. Yeah. 4 red shirts got killed. Oh well.
Yep, that's exactly it. To invoke that Star Trek deal with the red shirts, Star Wars has its own version of those with these Jedi now, and their only purpose is to serve up the meat grinder. That's the whole point of them. So I know it doesn't work for you, Jake. I think by and large, the overall reaction I've seen from most of us, and of course we're all entitled to our own decisions, not saying we're not, but this is probably one of the better received episodes of The Acolyte. Still, there's a lot of review bombing that's going on, but if you look at the various websites that take those meta scores, you look at that, this is the highest ranked one of them all. And I think
I'm not saying I necessarily have a problem with the whole episode as a whole. I just think
you did say the writing was not good.
The writing was not good, in my opinion. And I had, like I said, I have a whole list of why.
Okay.
But I just think that there are things that I would have done differently that would not have necessarily changed the outcome, but would have made it easier for me to believe and made it a little more realistic, but still gotten us to the same place.
Well, it's worth noting Jake has been probably the strongest proponent of the show up until episode 5. And this is interesting things flipping now, where Dan is like, you can keep the other 4 episodes. I'm hooked now with episode 5, and the exact opposite is true for Jake, which is so funny. So season 1, episode 5, titled Night. This episode of The Acolyte, it runs just about 30 minutes again, like the past one. These are 2 of the shorter episodes so far, and it was directed again by Alex Garcia Lopez, who also directed the previous episode, oddly titled Day, which corresponds with everything. And we start out this episode still on Kofar, with a knocked out Osha coming to, and from there we immediately see the battle raging on, which we've just been discussing, that whole part of it right here. I did make the reference earlier that I call this the Red Sith Wedding. Similar to the epic Game of Thrones Red Wedding episode, The Acolyte has its first bloodbath event as Mae's master makes mincemeat out of the entire regiment of Jedi, the platoon of Jedi, if you will, that seem to be very similar to Star Trek's Red Shirts, which Chris touched on earlier. And they're just there to get beat up and killed. So my question to you guys is, what do you make of the slaughter, and how does it impact your thoughts on the show as we've been discussing here? Do you see anything redeemable from this whole thing, Jake, for you coming out of this?
Absolutely.
Okay. So what's redeemable for
more
you?
Hot takes from Jake.
I think the twist at the end, all of the unknowns about Soul and what secrets he holds. I mean, it's still a strong show. There's still strong points to this particular episode. It's just there were issues that bothered me, but that doesn't mean that I hated the whole thing by any stretch.
Okay. All right, fair enough. Chris, what about you? How does it impact your thoughts on the show after seeing this episode and just it was a lot of bloodshed in this one. Not that we saw blood necessarily, but it was a lot of death in this one.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm a little frustrated. So first off, I really was hoping it wasn't Qimir, but I pretty much, after last episode, really show his arms a couple times. It just is so obvious. Like, I wanted it to just be a twist.
But wasn't it with Palpatine too? If you go back to the prequels, and we meet, Senator Palpatine.
We already knew it was Palpatine.
Yeah, I don't know if that's a
but I don't see how you can say when you already know who it's going to be. I don't see how you
I guess.
I don't know. Anyway, so that was annoying.
Too obvious for you.
I mean, I figured it, after the last episode, I was like, it's Qimir. We talked about it on the pod. So
what if they'd introduced him the second episode and just made it done there? Would that have worked for you? Because the timing, I guess, perhaps matters of when he's introduced. So there's not this kind of dragging out. Who's the guy in the mask that you see him at the very end of the first episode, and the second episode, would it have helped if they made it more known then?
This is a Star Wars mystery show, so I wanted there to be more mystery. But whatever, that's fine. It's not the end of the world. In terms of the Jedi slaughter, I don't have as big a problem as Jake has with it. I am a little annoyed at this show for making lots of characters that we like and then just throwing them away. I hear that. Jackie should not have died, in my opinion. That's just such a loss. Daphne Keen's performance has been awesome. And
screw the Yord Horde, but Jackie Lon was too big of a loss.
Yeah, I mean, one of them, but both of them, and I get why. You got to set up that Soul's the last survivor and blah blah blah. But man, that just
Soul survivor.
Yeah, he's a Soul survivor. Yeah. So I mean, dude, I get it, but I just wish they hadn't made that choice. But it is what it is, man. I mean, I think Leslie Headland's a little bit trying to channel Game of Thrones. So
it is a lot of big characters gone way too quickly, in my opinion. I will agree with you on that. I could have dealt with one or the other, preferably not Jackie. I too am a huge Jackie fan, and I hated seeing her go. I mean, that was really powerful when she was, 3-hole punched.
Well, and she was she was holding her own for a little while. I mean, you could say that was because, because she was channeling a little bit of dark side and letting emotion go, but
Soul definitely
she held her
was
own for a while. Yeah. So anyway, so it is what it is. That was annoying. I think the overall mystery, the switch of, Mae and Osha is again super obvious. I mean, it's interesting. I just when I think of mystery show, I want it to be frickin' Kaiser Soze, where you're your usual suspects, where you're you're like wondering till the end, and then it's like, oh, that's what I was thinking this was going to be. So again, I think that's just, expectations getting in the way of enjoying the show a little bit.
So overall, you don't think the reveal should have happened?
No. I'm not saying that. Like,
I don't think it's wrong if you feel that way. I'm just asking.
No, I wanted it to be someone else. That's what I'm saying. So it doesn't matter that it wasn't. The fact that they switch. Whatever,
what if it had been someone
fine.
You never saw before? If the reveal was that, would that have worked better for you?
I think it would have, yeah. But whatever, it is what it is. I mean, we've talked about it. When the show first started, I wanted it to be Pelagius or Tenebrous. It could still be somehow connected to them. I think I am the most curious to see how they resolve the, like we talked at the top of the show, the Sith had, been extinct for 1,000 years. That Qimir comment from the prequels, like that. I think they are going to resolve it. I just want to know how. I'm not really. I'm a little interested in what Mae's going to do to Soul, but not really. Like we at this point we know that bad stuff was done by the Jedis. When they were trying to take the girls.
Something bad.
It's just what is the level of badness? Yeah. So anyway, I don't think we are. I mean, the prequels show Kelnaka attacking Torben. So
yeah, I think we're going to see it.
We're wrong. I just don't think that it's as definitive in terms of what we've found out so far.
Oh, well, I don't know.
We're probably right.
So far, this show has been so obvious. Like, it's been on the
irritating.
nose. So, I guess that's the thing. Like, Leslie Headland was supposed to be this, Russian doll. Like, he leaves you wondering. It's all twisty. It's not really twisty, and that's fine. To be fair, like, again, Star Wars is supposed to be like a Saturday morning serial, like sci-fi show, pulp sci-fi show. So I'm not. It's just what I was led to believe based on the marketing what was going to happen. I guess that's really it. Like, I was led to believe it was going to be a slightly different genre or way of doing Star Wars mystery by the marketing, and that's not what it is. That's totally fine. I enjoyed it. I think it's an enjoyable show. I still don't, I'm not like Dan where it's like one of my top shows, but I am enjoying watching it. So, and I kind of want to see what happens. So I care a little less now that, like, in particular,
everybody's dead.
Well, yeah, I mean, especially Jackie, but whatever, it's fine. So
you were talking about something earlier when we switched topics in the middle of. I'm trying to remember. I'll go back to it in a little bit if I can remember where you were before we switched topics there. But I do want to point out that for me, when it comes to the mystery quality of the show, I know that it's supposed to be investigation. There's not a lot of investigating really going on. I'll grant you that.
Zero.
But when it comes to Headland and her style, I will say that I don't necessarily know that she is known for bringing a lot of twists early to midway through, but more toward the end. I'm not entirely convinced that we won't see some sort of twist at the end of the show or at the end of the season, I should say. I am good with everything. This does rank as one of my favorite Star Wars shows now. I've loved the casting. I've loved the story. I like being right about who the Master is. I like this character, Qimir. I love the duality that was so apparent right away that for me, if he wasn't the Master, it would have not worked for me just by how he was presenting. So I think I would have felt like that was a really cheap way to try to throw us off of who the Master was if it wasn't Qimir. And if you recall in the last episode of our podcast, I did express doubts that it could be him only because it did seem too obvious. But to me, the obvious choice is the best choice for the sake of the story in my approximation of everything. So I really like it. I think that Qimir is a very interesting character. I'm not entirely convinced that he is definitely Sith, though perhaps we should take him at face value when he says, "You can call me Sith." I don't know. I think it's been a lot of fun to watch him and to see that duality. And Dan keyed into it in some of our texts earlier today, too, looking at just how he kind of flips that switch when he talks about "you look just like her" in that second episode when he sees Osha and recognizes that she is not Mae. But then he also is specifically calling out that at that moment, Dan said that he thinks that Qimir senses that the stronger twin is not Mae, it's Osha. Yeah. And so he's kind of recognizing in that moment that he wants Osha for his acolyte, for his pupil. And that whole conversation that he has with Soul in that moment of like revelations of what's going on and what his motivations and what his designs and machinations are, it has a lot to do with what he wants. And I also pick up that this could be another allegory, if you will, for him talking about he just wants to live his life and do it the way he wants to. That could be something with a personal tie to Headland and looking for a deeper meaning. But I know what I am. I just want to be what I am. And I don't want you telling me that I can't be what I am. That message rang very loudly for me. So I thought that was interesting.
Something rang loud, because I still don't understand what the hell his motivation is. Like, why is he doing all this?
Why is he revealing himself?
No, why was he telling? Well, yeah, but why was he telling Mae to do all these things? Why does he give a crap
he basically
what the Jedi think?
He was testing her the whole time.
Some Jedi.
He's interjecting himself into a situation
that
didn't involve him to begin with, which causes his trouble. So
he didn't want to reveal himself. His helmet got knocked off of him, and then he's like, "Great, now I have to kill all of you."
Well, I guess that's my point. Is what do you think's going to happen when you send your apprentice to kill a bunch of Jedi?
I mean, you're kicking the hornet's nest, and then you get mad when you get stung, dumbass.
Well, clearly he has no doubt in his abilities to be able to kill a lot of Jedi all at once.
Well, even if he doesn't, if his whole point is, I want to be left alone.
I'll finish my point in a second when you're ready. Hang on. Go ahead.
Going to the police and flipping them off and then running away. I mean, you know what's going to happen. Why do it if you just want to be left alone?
What I wanted to finish my thought on is that he knows that he can do that. He can take on a whole bunch of Jedi at once. He wants a pupil, an acolyte, who's capable of doing what he can do. So I think that he wants to overthrow his master, if he has one, if he is indeed a Sith, and he needs someone who can hold their own like him. Though that also brings with it danger for a Sith to have someone who is as capable as you are, or can then go beyond your abilities. Sure. But he wants someone that will help him to overthrow his master. And if he's as strong as he is, and he has a master who's better than him, he needs someone who can hold their own. So I think he's testing her that whole time to find out if she's worthy of being his pupil. And he discovers, as he plainly states, once he's been exposed, she is not worth it. She was going to quit on him and run away, and she wasn't strong enough. But Osha, he sees talent in that could be much stronger and more impactful than what Mae possessed.
But again, none of this necessitates him taking the path he's chosen. Like, maybe he can accomplish all of his goals that he's mentioned without involving the Jedi and making his life harder.
We don't know the whole story, though.
That's why I'm saying what we've been told.
Yeah, so here's a point that I will give you a point on when it comes to writing. I think there's too much gatekeeping and secret keeping on this for things that, as an audience, we should be included in on to understand things better. There's nothing wrong with some twists and turns here and there, but I think that not only do the characters not know, but there are characters who do know that the audience should be in on the joke, or not the joke, but should be in on the story as well, and we're not. And I think that is a problem when it comes to certain motivations and things that are going on. So, and I've seen others complain about that, that we as an audience aren't as in the know as we perhaps should be for certain things, to make it more interesting for us to follow along with what's happening. Chris, I saw you shaking your head. No, what's your take?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, I don't know. I guess that's my point with what I was saying earlier with Leslie Headland and kind of the way this thing was marketed. Either make it a mystery and don't reveal stuff and make it like, oh, or reveal everything. But we're kind of in tweener land, which is a technical term we use in the business, which means, you're not over here, you're not over here, you're just kind of like,
you're in between,
oscillating in between, which in many cases in warfare is a bad thing to do.
I learned school good. So, I picked it up.
Yeah, there you go. So I don't know. I just wish they would have picked. Did they want to be a super mystery show with twists, or did they? I mean, I go back to what I said earlier. Hat tip to Screen Crush again. Like, it's like Scooby Doo, man. The one guy who's like suspicious. Oh man, his mask comes off. I would have gotten away with it. It wasn't for you pesky kids. So anyway,
I mean, there is that element here. I'll give you that. But I would go back to it, and I'll reiterate this one last time and then move on from it. But it makes sense. And if it was not him, it would have been just kind of a cheap ploy. And so to me, I think the obvious choice is the best choice.
But that's based on how they play it. That's what I'm saying, man. Like, they've set it up so that it has to be him. And that's my point, is like, not much either do that and give us like a little more backstory, like a cutaway to the plotting, a la what they did many times in the all of this like movies, or don't, and then make it a true surprise. But don't make it like, oh, we're not going to tell you, but we're going to beat you over the head with it's so obvious, anyway. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. I get it. I guess
That's
I'm looking at it from, we watched the first 4 episodes, and should the reveal happen, it would have not made sense. So I get what you're saying, that they shouldn't have written those previous episodes the way they did to make it so obvious. I get it.
Yep.
I like it. It worked for me. It doesn't for everybody, and that's fine. We all have our different views on those, and that's totally good. So let's talk
unless you disagree with Jake.
Let's bring in the ancient armor made of Cortosis. The Legends material makes its first bow in live action. Now, we know that this was first seen at Knights of the Old Republic and the Darth Bane novels. In canon, it first appeared in the Star Wars novel New Dawn. Yep. The substance can withstand a lightsaber strike, as we see in this episode, and also shorts it out for a brief amount of time. Now, this is something I figured you might actually approve of, Jake, when it comes to what we saw in this episode. Did you like seeing this element from, Legends or the EU come back into play here? Did you like at least that part?
Yeah.
Did that work for you?
Well, I mean, they're using it right, so yeah.
Okay. I really dug how they were slamming people around with it. I thought that was pretty cool. Like, even Yord using the helmet to create some havoc with Qimir. I thought that was very cool. I liked it.
But,
and I thought it was
neat. The other side of that is that, like, just like in real life, when someone's got armor on, you attack around the armor. Like the fact that he had this helmet on. Okay, stop slashing his head. Obviously, it's not having
because it's not working.
Slash somewhere else.
They do change their method of attack.
Yeah, like the entire time
fairly rapidly.
The Sith they Jedi War, the Sith their troopers had Cortosis armor on specifically for this reason, and yet the Jedi were still kicking their ass because they fought around it. That's just common sense. And yes, we do see it, but I think it took too long, and I don't think
I love they worked it in.
Trouble.
I like that we're incorporating elements that we have loved.
Oh, for sure. I mean, anything out of the EU
properties. Yeah,
I'm happy to see.
Yeah, I figured you would be. So let me ask another question then. How might the Jedi counteract the effects of Cortosis? What would you do in this situation? Obviously, you're saying don't hit the Cortosis. Yeah. Duh. Don't go after that. But are there any other techniques or technologies that you think we could see introduced because of this coming into play? Because we're bringing in this element from the EU. What would you also want to bring in that might tie in to Cortosis, or something else that was mentioned alongside Cortosis, Jake, that you think would be great to bring into play?
It would have to be something new.
Okay. All right.
It's not something that they ever, at least that I recall, ever talk about finding a way around. It's a physical property of the material.
So. Yeah, I mean, you're gonna, I don't know, I think anything that's like a direct workaround is gonna be cheesy, a la, one of the things that I least liked in Rebels was the machine, that they forced Sabine to make to like fry Beskar armored people. Yeah. I'm like, come on, that's just kind of silly. So I think anything you do that's a direct workaround is going to be like that. It's got to be like a fighting technique or something like that.
Cut around it.
Yeah. Well, speaking of the impacts of Cortosis, it seems to be that it's, at least Qimir hints at this, that it weakens the Jedi mind-altering abilities with what's doing and being able to read their minds like Magneto from the Marvel universe. So it's interesting to see that.
Jake is already pissed off enough, Nate. Do not bring more Marvel into this. It'll just make it worse.
No, the whole let's keep the helmet on.
I just got a can of gasoline I got pouring on fire.
Because it protects my thoughts. It's stupid. Yeah. And it's new. It's never been mentioned before that I remember. And yet, if we are going to go down that road, then you shouldn't be able to use mind tricks on people while you're wearing it. I mean, one way or the other, it either works both ways or it doesn't work at all. You can't have it go one way and not the other.
Well, there's other instances of people talking about technology that allows things in but not out, or vice versa. I mean, so there's that possibility that perhaps there's a lining that on the inside that allows him to refract, to do something outward. I don't know.
When the helmet comes off, he does have like an inner like skull cap liner thing. So I don't know.
Could be.
I just think you're reaching.
It could also be eye contact, face contact type thing. So who knows?
Yeah.
All right, well, let's move on to the next topic. Darth Teeth, as he's been labeled by most of the fandom. I still like Beavis better. The true identity's been revealed. We've gone into this with great detail. Who would you rather see this? Would you rather see it be someone you didn't know, or were you hoping it'd be another character we've already seen in the show? And if so, who would you have liked to have seen them make this master be?
Chris?
I don't think we need to answer again. I wanted it to be Tenebrous or Pelagius. Like that's what I wanted.
Yeah, Plagueis would have been really neat to have.
At least Vernestra Rowe would at least have been a little more of a twist.
So,
but as I said, like
killed.
Last episode when he kind of shows his scrawny arms, I'm like, it's Qimir.
Vernestra could have been an interesting choice, and I think it would have really enraged a lot of the fandom that has embraced the High Republic era. I mean, clearly, Jake, you and I have talked about it, and Chris as well. That's not us.
No.
We tried. It just those novels. Some of them were good. Some of them didn't click with us, and it's not that we're judging those who like them.
I would have been fine seeing get killed.
But for a lot of folks, they would not have liked to have seen her journey result in her becoming Sith. So, I get the people who are really high on the High Republic would not have liked that.
Womp womp, as the kids say nowadays.
So, yeah, I was just curious if you had, a running favorite that you were hoping it would be rather than Qimir.
Somebody new.
Just somebody new. Chris, somebody new, or Vernestra, or Tenebrous or Plagueis?
Yeah, that's my put. I said it from the top. Like I wanted it to be one of them, and so it could still be like, especially based on the dialogue Qimir makes towards the end of the episode. That, as you guys alluded to, he is really the apprentice. And, he's got a more powerful master waiting in the wings. We know.
I think so.
We know that even though the rule of two exists, like when they're like searching out new apprentices, there can be many. That's both canon and legends.
A more powerful master. How awesome that would be. He'll take the entire order out with the snap of his fingers.
No, he won't, because it's not the way things go. But, dude, like, you gotta. I guess my thing is, like, you can't get to Palpatine being as powerful as he is without having some powerful people before him. So I think that's what we're playing with here. So that's what I'd say.
Well, I do have to say, pretty sweet new Sith lightsaber design. I thought that was pretty awesome. Qimir introduces the new deceptive lightsaber design with a hidden Shoto blade within the hilt. And unfortunately, we discovered that with the loss of Jecki. Poor Jecki. I hate that we lost her, but I do have to say that was a pretty cool twist of things with that. What was your guys, Chris, what was your thoughts when you saw that his blade broke apart into two and had the Shoto blade to just three-hole puncher?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I get
a little too convenient?
I get it, but like we've already covered this. Like
I'm sorry, I missed it. I didn't realize we covered this.
I'm just saying, what I said earlier. There's only so many. Like, she was holding her own, and then like, come on, man. Like, and it just, I don't know. It annoys me that there are this many characters that we are getting invested in and then are killed off. Again, I understand why, but that's not.
She's nearly
that's
able
not my
to hold
thing.
her own.
Like Game of Thrones, or characters you don't know, maybe. But even that trope got old in Game of Thrones. Like by the end, you're like, oh, okay.
Because we had a few seasons with him too.
Every time we're, and then there still end up being like some characters that never die, right? So you're like, well, I don't know, dude. It is what it is. But I wanted Jecki to survive because I thought, I guess that's the thing.
It was a cool character.
It's like Kelnaka. It's a cool character that you could have done a lot with, and now that's not a thing. And you're just slowly. I mean, that's why I think like obviously we've talked about already, the big mystery of the show is like what happened, what did Soul and those guys do that was so bad? We're going to probably get that at some point. And then is there like a master above Qimir? I think those are the two things. But there's just a lot of other stuff that I want to see happen that we're not going to see because they killed off basically everybody that's not Soul. So anyway, it is what it is. I mean, I guess that's another question. Like, how well, exactly. It was cheap. And how are you going to have a season 2 when you like, I mean, this is like, anecdotally, when Taylor Sheridan did 1883 like,
killed everybody.
They come back and they're like, hey, good news. Even before it premieres, it's testing so well. We're going to greenlight a season 2. And he's like,
no,
everybody died, dude.
Yeah.
They're all dead.
They're all dead. Yeah. Jake, what about you?
I did not. Wait, I'm sorry. What are we talking about now?
Well,
Jecki.
I don't think that they should have killed her off. And I think the fact that she was able to just about hold her own with Qimir, she was able to kick Mae's ass, and yet her and Soul together couldn't handle Qimir. That doesn't make any sense to me.
And then Soul could.
And there's nothing that you're going to say that's going to change my mind on that, so don't bother. But I do think that it was cheap to kill her off. I think that her character was awesome. And I think that, having a character that you connect with and then just immediately killing them off for really legitimately no reason, apparently, other than she just happened to be in the way. Like, so she didn't even sacrifice herself or anything for good. She just died.
Well, that's not exactly. That's not true. Hold on. Jake, she saves Soul, right? Soul's lightsaber gets shorted out by the Cortosis, and she jumps in and saves him. So I disagree a little that, like,
all right.
Like, she saves her master. But sorry, Nate, go ahead.
I was just going to say that, I've been trying to think about how do we justify this? And I keep thinking back to this is supposed to be a show from the point of view of the Sith. I think that Osha does become this whole big switch, that Osha does become his acolyte, becomes his apprentice. And that's where things develop from here. And that she can't have these attachments because she was forming an attachment to Jeki specifically. She really liked him. She had a connection already established with Yord from their days together during their training.
So then have her kill him off later. That would have been better. Yeah.
But I'm thinking for her to start going down this path, she has to shed all the things from her light side life.
So they
and
just
so
conveniently
I feel like
disappear?
the story is serving that up for her, and it's not. It makes it easier for her to make the transition if all the people that she did have attachments to are gone.
Agreed. I think there would a better way to do it.
We know there's a secret that Soul's keeping that will likely make her hate him.
Yeah.
Right? That's what we're leading up to. That's the big mystery now.
The master and she serves him again.
Well, we'll see what happens, but I think that's the big mystery now. What is this secret that Soul is hiding about what really went down on her home world?
They've built it up to be so insanely huge that I don't know what they could have it be that would be legitimately good enough at this point. Like, what on earth did he do that is so terrible that it eclipses everything we've heard about or seen anywhere in Star Wars ever? That's kind of how I felt like they built it up.
We don't know what it is, so we'll have to find out.
Exactly. But what could it be that would be that awful? Like, unless he's a pedophile or something. And honestly, I
don't think we're going to see that in Star Wars.
Well, but that's my point. Like, what sort of evil could he have perpetrated that would be so awful that, like, Torben kills himself over it?
He killed her
mom.
Yeah.
Well, I guess, but I think that haven't they kind of like made the point that was Mae that did those things?
Nope.
I think that she's supposed to believe that Mae did. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean,
it's sort of like where we get 2 points of view on the same events. I think that's what, we've gotten the Osha Jedi point of view, and we're going to get the Mae, the opposing point of view.
Well, we're going to see what happens. Walk in and murder them with no warning whatsoever while they're unarmed. It's not bad enough. And it doesn't make sense to me to have them be like that when in this situation, in this episode, we see Soul unwilling to finish off Qimir, who's clearly a threat, armed or unarmed, when he has the chance, because it's not the Jedi way. And yet somehow it was the Jedi way to murder these women in order to steal their children. That doesn't make sense to me. I don't know. That's just me.
Maybe with more reveals, it will make sense. We'll have to wait and see. So
I
more answers needed. More answers definitely needed.
We'll sort it out.
Let's get in the twin switch. I feel like this episode, if there was a failing of it for me, I feel like all of it was built up to the twins, the adult twins, finally meeting up again and having a moment together, as opposed to being on the run, seeing each other, but not actually doing anything about it, not getting a chance to really connect for a moment. We get that connection at the end of this episode. I feel like that everything's been built up to that moment. And to me, I'll be honest, I don't know that I care that much about their reunion. I don't know that I care that much about it. I think really what mattered to me was the reveal of the master and all that was going on and the amount of loss they experienced. But the story for me is not stronger for this reunion. I think it would have been better if they didn't get a chance to meet up. Yeah, I do.
Interesting.
So that's my one, I guess the biggest gripe I would have is that I just don't care that much about them.
What about you, Chris? Do you care about the reunion?
I mean, I mean, as when they met and they start talking to each other, I'm like, oh, I see where this is going immediately. And I'm just like, oh, come on. Really? The Parent Trap? That's what we're going with. Like, come on.
I know.
I don't know. I mean,
I didn't love that.
The original Parent Trap when you were a kid in the 80s, fine. The not so much after remade with Lindsay Lohan. Sorry, Lindsay. But I don't know. I think more interesting the force healing and the dialogue Qimir says to unconscious Osha. Well, dude, so I mean, I had Tip Them a Lot. Screen Crush talked about this, where it kind of alludes to, well, it might be a Plagueis connection because the ability to influence midichlorians to affect life or save a life or heal, like that is something, again, if we look Legends now, but that novel talks extensively about how he was one of the first ones to experiment with, basically, he repeatedly basically murders people and then, tries to save them before they die after murdering them. So I think, that I am, again, this is my own wishing, projecting my desires onto the show, but I hope that is a connection, that he does end up being the big bad behind everything, because that would set up season 2. So.
It would. It definitely would. Well, again,
what do you think, though, Nate? I mean, you it sounds like you are on board with this. You don't like the Parent Trap aspect, but you kind of are wondering about the mystery, or I don't know. It sounds like it didn't work for you. Kind of like it didn't work for me.
The twin switch doesn't work for me, just because I think that if I have a problem with it, Jake, you went into it earlier about how are the Jedi so easily fooled by the deception of the Sith. And by the Master Qimir in this situation. I feel like he would recognize this is not Osha. As he's walking along with her, he would recognize that, which, hey, that was a cool scene when she takes the lightsaber and cuts her hair. Cool. It looked neat, but at the same time, I just didn't feel like Soul would be that easily fooled. And I'm suspecting he's not fooled, and we pick up on that in the next episode, that he knows it's not her, and things go from there. I'm hoping that's the case, that he seems to be going along with it, but picks up on it, and it's just trying to fool her now.
Maybe.
I don't know.
I just don't think.
Do you think? Okay, so do you guys think they have a forced dyad going on here?
I do think there's something leading up to that. I do.
I mean, they do very similar things to Luke and Leia, where they're able to talk to each other. Young Mae's talking to young Osha repeatedly. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how they play that. I guess I'm a little interested in that, but the Parent Trap thing, no. So
I do think there's similarities. I do also. I think we probably need to pick up on this too. That it was interesting that when he reveals himself, looking at similarities between other stories in canon at this point, that when Qimir reveals himself too, or when he's leaning down to talk to her, whatever I should say later on, we hear when he's talking to Osha or whatever, we hear that Kylo Ren theme. I think that's interesting to hear that come through.
Yeah.
And I would also say that so seeing a dyad come to play when they're showing so many similarities between other Star Wars storylines, I would not be shocked at all if a dyad is what's being hinted at here with the twins. I think that makes sense to me. And on top of that, I would say another similarity to previous Star Wars stories we've seen is when we hear "you turn them against me." Hearing that line, exactly. I found that very interesting that we hear that coming through again. And another similarity for me, going back to Soul not killing Qimir in that moment, when you see that Mace Windu Anakin Palpatine moment all over again, when Osha yells at Soul not to go forward with it and strike him down when he's unarmed, I was like, no, we're not doing this again. Did we learn nothing? But of course that hasn't happened yet, because this takes place, 100 years before all that. So
they're not used to dealing with Sith,
even 100 years ahead of time.
Yeah, it really bothered me.
Jake's just upset because he knows that Mace is still alive.
Yeah. Oh man,
Boop, pushing Jake's button. Boop.
I will don't agree with leaving enemies like that, and this whole idea that it's not sporting to kill him unless he's armed. It's like he has obviously proven himself to be an exceptionally deadly threat, armed or not, and he's also said he's bound to kill you no matter what.
Yeah.
So you don't let him go. You kill him. Period.
I'm looking through my notes because I typed down notes as I'm going through. There's a few moments that we haven't touched on that I really wanted to get to. I thought it was cool with the lights, how important that was in Pip's sacrifice, though it appears not to have been a sacrifice, as it appears that Basil found Pip and takes care of that.
I have a problem with. Go ahead.
Oh, really?
Yes.
You have a problem with Basil?
No, the light.
With the lights.
The whole Umbra Moth thing. Like,
okay.
Qimir is kicking Jedi ass left and right, up and down, and yet he's somehow brought low by a couple of freaking bugs. Give me a break.
But a lot of them. A lot of them.
It was stupid. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay.
Continue on.
All right. I found it interesting that they talk about how the Jedi do not attack the unarmed. That keeps being brought up over and over again. I feel that has everything to do with what happened on their homeworld and what happened with the Coven. I feel like that's being brought up way too many times.
Is a Force user ever really unarmed?
I mean, no, but still at the same time,
unless they're drugged.
Yeah. We get another moment of I'll explain everything again. We get this, and of course, no, we don't get that. There's the whole line about don't choose them, choose us, where Mae's trying to tell Osha it's about us. We're important. And again, that's why I lead toward that whole Force dyad thing. I think it's interesting. I loved the speech, and I had this in my notes. I loved the speech that he gives about where he says, I want a pupil. I want an acolyte. I love that element. And I love why he feels like I shouldn't have to hide this. So that's why I'm telling you, because I'm going to kill you. I know I'm going to kill you.
Galaxy's
so I'll tell you what I want. Yeah.
You could go do what you want somewhere else and not be bothered.
I thought the fight with Jecki and Mae was great because, again, Jecki's tenacity and she really was skilled. I thought that was really well executed. I think the action overall, the superstar,
soft, right? Even though she knows how to fight like that, she must just be soft.
Well,
that's why she gets killed.
I think that's why she's the last one standing, right? Even though she's a Padawan, she's not. Yeah. She's a badass. So
she's
not a red shirt, Jake. She's not a red
job.
I wrote down. He said it. Sith. I wrote that note down. I loved it when we heard that because finally we're hearing it. I put Yord no with exclamation points and damn it, Jecki. These are all things that I wrote down as I went through this. But I said pretty genius move to sacrifice Pip to get rid of Darth Beavis. You don't like that one, Jake, but I thought it was pretty interesting and a neat.
No, I like her thought of doing it.
Okay.
I just don't think it should have been as effective as it was based on what we've seen so far. The thought was fine though.
Good okay. Idea. So, and then I also wrote in there about Mae talking to Osha and echoing Anakin. They've turned you against me. I thought that was a really cool callback to bring that back.
Done that
I have to think that was intentional. Yeah. I love seeing Basil at the end. That was another one. Like, I just love Basil. And I didn't realize this before with last week's episode. We were talking about this. I didn't know that the concept of his species has been around for like 40 years.
Oh, yeah.
So
yeah.
I was unaware of that. So that was new to me.
Novels.
Yeah. I was totally unaware of that. I love that they went that deep. It was a deep cut, so I think that's very cool. So those are the things I like.
The book right here, Han Solo's Revenge.
All right, there it is. There it is.
Yeah, obviously Basil will be the one person that doesn't get fooled and knows exactly who everybody is based on his nose.
Well, the other items I have, the lone Jedi survivor, Sol is the only Jedi left standing after a brutal battle with the Sith Master and Yord and Jecki killed. So implications for Sol, guys. Being the sole survivor, how does this shape his future actions and decisions? Do you think he's going to keep more secrets about the Sith? Is he going to report back? What do you think happens from here?
He's going to Luke Skywalker it and go hide somewhere and be a hermit.
Yeah, I don't know. I said already, maybe Barash Vow, but something's going to happen, right? I don't think he goes back to. I don't think he goes back to Coruscant and reports in. I guess it is potential, but man.
Well, he can't because if he goes to the Jedi Temple, he's going to know which twin is which, and they have to keep them apart.
The other thing I think is just, they're going to, I think in the next episode or two, we're going to get more resolution on what happened, when the girls were being taken. And then I think that's going to set up why he can't go back to the temple and like let everybody know exactly what happened. I mean, not to mention the fact like you were in charge of this expedition and everyone got murdered except you. Kind of looks bad.
Yeah, just a bit.
Anyway,
if you were looking into the future at this point, what do you think happens between the relationship between Mae and Sol? She thinks she's fooling him right now, and she very well may be. But what do you think happens there between those two? because she's seen again and again he's still trying to save her. Where do you think that goes?
Her later, in front of Osha.
Wow,
hot take.
That's dark.
Interesting hot take.
Yeah.
Osha's already been telling everybody to make sure they do it. And don't even get me started on Osha and her blaster. Seriously, take her blaster away. She is such an idiot. She takes that blaster out 20 times, but only shoots it when it's the worst possible moment to do it. It's like, anyway.
I do think that we see a complete flip of the two and their force alignment. I think we're going to see a complete shift.
Up. So, but then do you think there's redemption at the end?
I mean, Star Wars usually is about redemption, but I don't know if that'll be what happens in this case because this is a story about Sith. Yeah.
Well, do you think redemption not in this season, but maybe in a future season, or
maybe
you just think like not at all, Nate?
I maybe because Star Wars loves redemption. So there's been multiple moments.
Someone alive though to be redeemed.
True, and I don't know that anyone will survive. I'm still not entirely sure that Saul makes it much longer in the show. It just Pip.
And
I don't know, man. If they really are bringing in Plagius, I think they can kill everybody and he's the only one that needs to live. So I don't know. It'll be interesting. I think that I guess that's what I'd say. I'm still interested to see how they end the story, what happens. Yeah. I'm not as I said earlier, it's not the same anticipation that I had for, some of the Mandalorian or parts of Ahsoka or stuff like that. But I'm still interested to see what happens. So
you're still on board.
Yeah, I'm on board. But I mean, this is solidified, and rewatching a couple of episodes has solidified. This is not, we've talked about it before. Return of the Jedi is my favorite movie. I like Star Wars. War. Yeah. So I like big space battles. I do like the Jedi thing, but Return of the Jedi is perfect. You have giant space battle and a Jedi battle happening simultaneously at the same time. You get to have your cake and eat it too. This is I don't know. It's okay. It's not. I think they could have done more with the investigation and mystery of it, and they didn't. So the mystery
more
about
the secret that Soul's hiding.
That's right. Yeah, it's totally what it's about, which is totally fine. It just is, as I said up top, it's different than what I was led to believe by the marketing. So that's fine.
Fair enough.
It's just not. It's not going to be my favorite show as a result, I think. So at least not yet.
How does this show rank now that you've seen 5 episodes of it versus after you'd seen 4?
I mean, I'm still hopeful about the show. I'm not I don't suddenly hate the show. I don't,
I don't know. You did say you hated it earlier. I just hate this episode. You hate this episode. Got it. Okay.
But I still like the show. And I still think there's a lot of cool things that can happen. And I am still wanting to find out at the end what the whole deal is. I'm still on board with that part.
Okay. So, Chris, you said it's not your favorite Star Wars show, but where does it rank for you now?
I mean, I said earlier, I think it's above Book of Boba Fett. It's around Obi-Wan Kenobi-ish, I still think I'm having a hard time between Ahsoka and Mando now, deciding, which is my current favorite Star Wars TV so far. But I think, it's medium. So I do really enjoy there's a lot of cool Star Wars stuff in it. And I think that's what I enjoy. But just in terms of the show, it's not, I think I'm kind of at a point where you've killed off so many characters that I wanted to see them do cool stuff. Kilnaka and Dara was whatever. Karen Moss didn't care about, but now Jackie and even Yorn, I'm okay, well now you have no comic relief. You don't have the person that's set up to be if not the heroine, the additional heroine. I get it, but I don't know. That's difficult.
It's lost
a
step
in Game
for
of
you.
Thrones because Game of Thrones is such a massive scale.
Yeah.
And so many characters that
this is much smaller.
This is a smaller thing. And, you had this awesome cast and you just are kind of throwing it away in episode 5. So
they killed off pretty much everybody.
Yeah. So, I mean, I reserve judgment. It could end up being like a lot better after I've seen more, but I just right now, like I'm enjoying, like I said, the wipes and fades, the stylistic, like Kilnaka's saber at the end, stuck in the red dirt looks, kind of like when Luke's saber is stuck in the snow on Hoth. Like, there's a lot of cool callbacks and things like that, but just fanboy stuff and fan service, as Dan would call it, is not enough to keep me interested. The Jedi battle was cool, but I don't know. I think if they went to kill Jecki, I would feel a lot better about this episode. That's that really just kind of made it tough for me. So
it is a big gamble to make, to kill off when you're only 5 episodes in, to make us care about certain characters when you don't have a lot of characters that you've gotten to know. It's a very big gamble to kill off the ones that you've wanted us to get invested into.
Yeah.
And I don't care enough about Osha or Mae.
Nope.
As much as I did. And we didn't get even a lot of time with either Jecki or Yord. Sometime, but Sol's probably the one we've gotten the most with of all the Jedi we've met. I really liked Sol. Really like that character. So I'm glad that he, of course, does. And that's the one character that everyone was like, for sure is going to survive this fight. But I think most of us thought that Jecki was going to survive, and losing her was very big. We really liked her. The audience really liked her a lot. And so it hits harder, and it's such potentially it could be a really huge mistake, because who we supposed to care about? Sol's carrying the secret that's really bad, and we may not like him later on. Osha might be turning to the dark side if the story that I think is happening, it continues to unfold that way. Mae's not someone who I particularly care about. Who do I care about? So that's the problem I'm facing now. As we move forward, I don't know who I care about.
This is one of the problems with this, is that
Basil wins.
If you're talking a serialized, Sunday morning type cartoon type thing, which is again what this Star Wars originally was. That's why the merchandising works so well, right? It's for kids, and you have action figures, as Dan has pointed out, and I think people by now have realized, but Dan, does a lot of collectible stuff. Killing off the character makes the action figure like
a peg warmer.
Not very valuable.
Yeah. A peg warmer.
It's like,
yeah.
So I mean, you just killed off literally everyone. Like, so, like Yord Horde.
Gutsy.
How many Yord Horde people are, I mean, so that's where my hope is what you say, Nate, where I hope they make it pay off. So,
yeah.
But so Nate, what would the payoff be? What would make it worthwhile for you? What, like big reveal of like another big bad, or like what makes this right for you?
I think if there is a big reveal to be made, what would make it worthwhile for me is that it's Plagueis is the big master. Yeah. That's who it'd be for me.
Jake, you're shaking your head. Same thing?
Pretty much. I mean, I don't know what else you could do to salvage the whole "we killed everybody" thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or Tenebris, but I think Plagueis is what it needs to be.
Plagueis is most likely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's a
tough call.
This is where we need Dan to be the. We were missing our red team. Jake was sort of our red team on this episode. Longtime listeners will note, but man, we need to get Dan on to be the true red team.
And just for you guys to know, in our text conversation, man, oh man, it's the three of us, it's Dan, and it's Matt Tagami, who runs our social media. And man, it was so fun. Dan was coming in hot with all his takes.
He was like loving
it.
He
Kill
was
all
on
the Jedi
fire today.
Yeah.
Kill them all. Kill all the
them Jedi. They're soft. They deserve it.
He
all
wants
of
to
them
see
gone.
more Sith, more powerful Sith.
Well, and he was pointing out that he's never really gotten to see like Sith that was like at their full power and really
Peak
just
Vader
having
and Palp's going crazy. Those are the only 2 times. So I that's why, and but I think that reinforces what the three of us just said. Not that Dan would probably agree with us because
it's Dan.
Because it's Dan, but man, like that's why powerful Sith. This is bringing Plagueis. Make Darth Plagueis, make him canon. Let's play with that. Yeah. Let's see where that goes. So
I agree. Well, and he is canon because if you remember,
I know he's
bring
canon,
him out in live action.
Bring in like some elements of how he got that power, and like and I guess that's what I'm thinking. Like, if we really are trying to see things from the Sith perspective, which again is how the marketing has been driven on Leslie Headland, we're going to look at the story from the Sith perspective. Well, if that's the case, then we need to see some more Sith, and it can't just be like, Qimir, and I mean, people pointed out like Qimir pretending to be dumb is kind of like Yoda when Luke first meets him on Dagobah and he's pretending to just be a bumbling, bumpkin. Yeah. I get that, but dude, like Qimir is not enough. It's got to be something beyond that. So we're right back to where we started on the review of the first episode, where we're like, the big bad is the most important thing, and it still is.
It is,
and it might be the big bad that Jake hates and Dan loves, but it just needs to be some sort of big bad.
I dig
that's
Qimir.
Not Qimir.
I like Qimir a lot, so I'm loving it. And I think Manny Jacinto's performance does such a great job of flipping the switch, because he can be so charming and so almost funny. And you think of him when he was on the show The Good Place playing the lovable idiot, and you see him here, and he can just, he can be just menacing too. And the way he's able to flip between the two, my hat's off to Manny Jacinto. Great performance. He really nails it. It. So awesome. With that, guys, we've come to the end of the show. So we've had some rather strong opinions on some things with this, and I gather it'll probably be the same next week. And I should point out, maybe 5 episodes in, only 3 episodes left. Only 3 more Acolyte after shows left, guys, until the next season, which I have to think that with numbers being as strong as they are, despite all the negativity out there from parts of the fandom and the review bombing and all the bots out there that are review bombing, it seems to be that the people are watching as one of the most successful deals. I will add to a question I asked to you guys earlier. For me, the order still goes Andor number 1, followed by a very, very close Ahsoka at number 2. Very close, almost indistinguishable between the two as far as I'm concerned. And then this show is my third. It beats Mando.
Above Mando.
It beats
all 3
Mando
seasons of Mando, or is there a Mando season breakdown?
If I'd only had the first 2 seasons of Mando, I would probably say that this might follow that. But the 3rd season of Mando was pretty weak in my opinion. So I think because of that and what happened with the big bad for Mando, I'm liking the villain in this one a lot more. And I loved the villain for Moff Gideon for Mando, but I thought season 3 was just not ideal.
Mando season 1 or season 2, are either of those higher than Acolyte?
Season 1 and season 2 would be up higher. Acolyte. Yeah, would be above Acolyte.
Okay.
But if I'm taking the full weight of it, Acolyte overall beats overall Mando.
I can take that. I can get on board with that.
Yeah. So there it is. Well, that wraps up our show today, and make sure you join us next time. We'll be back next week with the breakdown of episode 6, the latest episode that, of course, will bring us that much closer, 3/4 of the way through with the first season of The Acolyte. These really need to be 10, 12 episode seasons. I'm just saying, it's just gotta be. Please remember you can catch us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, or your Amazon Alexa device, and so many other platforms, of course. Don't forget to subscribe, leave us that review, and make sure you check us out on social media. Just search at The Force Geeks. You'll find us. And, hey, if you're not following The Force Geeks, you're looking for your Star Wars in Alderaan places. Talk to you soon. May the Force be with you always.